crisis at the BBC as its Director General resigns. Tim Davie has stepped down after criticism of the corporation over the way a speech by the US President was edited. So who will the BBC turn to next for its top job?
The role of Editor-in-Chief and DG of the BBC is becoming close to undoable. I think the pressures on that job and the recent history of people having to quit shows it is extraordinarily tough.
The Director General told staff the BBC should be championed, not weaponised, but he had to take ultimate responsibility for mistakes. Also tonight, the King leads the nation in remembering the fallen and
On TV News with Romilly Weeks.
Good evening. The BBC is in turmoil tonight after its Director General Tim Davie stepped down over accusations of bias at the corporation. The row centres on its editing of a speech made by Donald Trump ahead of the January the 6th, the US Capitol riots, as well as its coverage of Gaza and trans rights. Mr. Davie said the decision to resign was entirely his own and that he had to take ultimate responsibility for mistakes made. The row has also claimed the job of the head of BBC News, Deborah Turness. Tonight, President Trump himself celebrated their resignations. Graham Stothard reports.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
This was the video edit that set these events into motion. Donald Trump's speech in 2021 ahead of the Capitol Hill riots, cut for a panorama documentary in a way now found to have misled viewers, made to look like he was explicitly inciting the violence. An apology from the BBC was expected tomorrow, but instead this evening a shock announcement. Tim Davie, who's been at the organisation for 20 years, headed it for 5, was stepping down, in a statement saying in these increasingly polarised times, the BBC is of unique value and speaks to the very best of us. There have been some mistakes made, and as Director General, I have to take ultimate responsibility.
The role of Editor-in-Chief and DG of the BBC is becoming close to undoable. I think the pressures on that job and the recent history of people having to quit shows it is extraordinarily tough.
Pressure had been building for the past few days. President Trump's White House taking aim at the panorama edit. But there have also been reports of an internal memo which raised concerns over systemic problems of bias in BBC Arabic's coverage of the Israel-Gaza war. Nicknamed Teflon Tim, he'd managed to weather a number of storms, among them Bob Villan at Glastonbury, and misconduct by a number of flagship presenters, including former news anchor Hugh Edwards and MasterChef's Greg Wallace.
No one's irreplaceable. We're all dispensable. That's an absolute, unequivocal position being given to the whole BBC.
That was Tim Davie speaking to a select committee in September. Now it's him being replaced. The pressure has also claimed the BBC CEO of News, Deborah Turness, who said in a statement, "The buck stops with me." Tonight, Donald Trump celebrated on social media, calling them very dishonest people. The former BBC chair, Lord Patton, has called it unacceptable.
I feel very sorry for Tim Davie and his colleague, that it's really, really important today for us to protect the integrity and the independence of public service broadcasting, and we cannot lose that without losing an important part of our democracy.
The current BBC chair has thanked both of them for their work. Tim Davie's successor will now be chosen in the coming months. Graham Stothard, ITV News.
And I'm joined now by political correspondent Lucy McDade. Lucy, huge news from the BBC tonight. What's the reaction been?
Well, it's completely unsurprising, really, that it's reignited this massive political row about the future of the BBC. Politicians on the right, to put it very bluntly, are celebrating. This has opened the door for them to call into question again the existence of the licence fee and indeed the corporation itself. Those calls are mainly coming from Reform and some Conservatives this evening. Kemi Badenoch, she has said what needs to happen now is fundamental cultural change at the BBC. And just this morning, her party was saying on the broadcast rounds that the next few days would be the final test for Tim Davie to prove his position was tenable. Tonight, the response from the government has been a bit more muted. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has thanked Tim Davie for his service, but quite a pointed remark in sending the message even that this proves now more than ever before trusted news is critical. The domestic politics aside, what has been striking in this impartiality episode at the BBC is the backlash from Donald Trump. In the past few hours, the White House press secretary has responded online. Just over an hour ago, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social. He, and I quote, he celebrated the Telegraph newspaper for exposing who he calls corrupt journalists. His influence here has been unquestionable. The BBC can't afford to take on the world's most powerful man. These are very important jobs, perhaps previously very attractive. Who's going to want to take them on now?
Exactly. Lucy, thank you. The King led commemorations at the Cenotaph today as people across the country paused to honour those who've died in conflict. From the capitals of the four nations to villages and towns across the UK, millions observed 2 minutes of silence on Remembrance Sunday. Ellie Pitt reports.
With the sound of a bell, 2 sacred minutes of silence started. The nation paused to honour peace and remember those who never lived to see it. For more than 100 years, we have marked the moment the bullet stopped. But it is a gun, and then a bugle that breaks the quiet. The King laid his wreath first. It is similar in design to his grandfather's, King George VI, who led the country on the first official Remembrance Sunday in 1946. Prince William, the former search and rescue pilot with 7 years' service, followed. Before political leaders paid their tributes too. The few veterans with service of the Second World War in living memory were at the front of the parade, this year marking 80 years since the end of that conflict.
I think it's a great honour to come here because I was one of the lucky ones. I came home, but all those thousands of men that were killed, it was such a young fellas and that sort of thing, such a waste, such a terrible tragedy, and of course it's going on today.
The tradition of the ceremony at the Cenotaph is as constant as the reason it is held, to honour the sacrifice of those who were not there. Ellie Pitt, ITV News.
Super typhoon Fung Wong has made landfall in the Philippines with nearly 1 million people forced to flee their homes. The typhoon has prompted the government to declare a state of emergency with winds reaching speeds of over 140 miles per hour. Lando Norris has tightened his grip on the Formula One World Championship by winning the Brazilian Grand Prix. The McLaren driver put on a dominant display to claim his 7th win of the season and put him 24 points clear with just 3 races to go. Finally, is Liverpool's Premier League title defence already over? Defeat at Manchester City today left them 8 points adrift of leaders Arsenal. Chris Scudder reports.
But even when he does miss, he usually scores as well. Liverpool then thought they'd equalised through Virgil van Dijk, but controversial with the goalkeeper's view. And that was twice as painful as City went 2-0 in front. Celebrations from Pep Guardiola on his 1000th match as manager. City were rampant and Jeremy Doku made it 3 with a beauty.
And that's all for tonight. The weather forecast is next from all the team here. Good night.